Veterans have reported Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch on the entire roster. Some injuries. Niners have signed a brand new wide receiver and tons more on 49ers training camp from the head coach and GM on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Coach Crocky. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Love our everydayers. Thanks for hanging with us, getting ready for the season. And it is finally here. Practice number 1 happening Wednesday. And Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch talking about a number of aspects of the 53-man roster, the potential hold-in or not of and trade request or not of Jauan Jennings, and so much more. So appreciate you being here with us. Make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube and anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We got to start with Jauan Jennings, I think, Croc. And I love the dichotomy of John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. And John Lynch really trying to keep things close to the vest and not divulge too much information, basically saying multiple times, we love Jennings, we love him, we love Jauan Jennings. He's here. And he has shown up. He has reported to training camp, and John Lynch saying that they expect him to be out there. So as of now, we know that Jauan Jennings has reported, and the 49ers expect him to practice. So we'll see if he holds in and actually does practice or not. Clearly, he wants a new contract, Croc. But when asked and pressed further about if he actually requested a trade or not, John Lynch again answered, we love him and he's here, and didn't want to divulge any more information. Kyle Shanahan piped in and said he has not officially requested a trade from the 49ers. So from that standpoint, I think it's good news for the 49ers and Jauan Jennings, and hopefully he is there and he's practicing and everything's good, and they continue to talk negotiations with his contract as he practices.
I feel like John Lynch wanted to dive a little bit deeper in there and kind of over-explain. And Kyle Shanahan did a really good job of kind of saving him from that, and was like, he has not formally requested a trade. What it sounded like to me, listening to the situation, they understand what the dynamics of it are. And I think they're being very, I don't know, politically correct's not the right answer or response. It's
GM speak, I think, is what it was.
GM speak.
Yeah.
Technically, Jennings probably did not say
formally,
hey, pay me or trade me.
Formally. He didn't write a written request.
Or maybe he said this. Maybe he did say pay me or trade me, but he did not say I want a trade.
Yes,
so
I didn't need a trade. Formally.
Just listening to the two different responses to that question, it sounded like John Lynch kind of wanted to be like, he's here. He's in the building. Passes physical. So we'll see. But Kyle Shanahan kind of saved the day. I think Kyle knows exactly where Jauan Jennings stands. And I don't want to say I'd be shocked, right? By the time you guys listen to this Wednesday morning, I don't want to say I'd be shocked if Jauan Jennings is out there, but a little surprising that he's chosen to play it that way. I expect him to do the quote-unquote hold in. And although he passes physical, my ankle's just a little stiff right now. I got to sit down today.
Right. So we'll see what happens there. Well, last year it happened with Brandon Aiyuk, and he didn't even pretend. He's just like, oh, I don't want to be fined. So I'm going to be around, but I'm not practicing. So it was like the most obvious hold in, hold out situation ever. And I wonder if Jauan Jennings could learn from that and be like, well, I'm not practicing. So there's that. And if he even fakes any kind of an injury there. Great time for him, though, because the 49ers are thin at wide receiver, and Kyle Shanahan talked about why the 49ers signed Equanimeous St. Brown, veteran wide receiver, former Notre Dame product, 6'5", 4.4 speed. He was a draft crush of mine before the draft, whatever year that was, 2020, when he was coming into the NFL. And
I feel like St. Brown, yeah, maybe. Yeah, about 2020, right? Brandon Aiyuk's class.
Something like that. I think right in that range. And he was one of, I think, 3 wide receivers drafted by the Packers that year. And I think the third of those 3 might have been Marquez Valdez-Scantling is the one that hit. And then there was the third wide receiver that was the first wide receiver taken. And I think he was the worst of the 3 and has had almost no career.
If it was the year with Valdez-Scantling, I believe that was the Dante Pettis year, maybe.
So all the way back to 2008.
Maybe 2008.
Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah, and little did we know back then that Kyle Shanahan usually doesn't like those tall, fast wide receivers, right? And he was one of those guys who was like, oh, you just don't like that type. You didn't want DK Metcalf, no Equanimeous St. Brown. Now, Equanimeous St. Brown's had a rough career, and I think aside from being tall and fast, hasn't shown enough other skills in the NFL to create a stronghold for himself. Clearly, he was the best of the half a dozen wide receivers, though, that the 49ers worked out yesterday and ended up signing EQ St. Brown to a 1-year contract. And Kyle talked about having, he wants to have 12 receivers at camp. So I don't know if you would call him a camp body, but that's kind of the idea I got from Kyle Shanahan. Is like, we just need more wide receivers. He was the best of the guys who worked out yesterday. So we signed him because you start dropping down to 9 wide receivers and you're just going to get more guys hurt.
I think that guys, they understand the business of the NFL, and Equanimeous St. Brown does. He is quote unquote a camp body, but if you ask him and maybe what he was told, there potentially could be an opportunity to land on the practice squad, right? That you may not have that opportunity if you're not in camp. So at the very least, hey, you come out, do some things, show out, and show some of your ability and in the stature and frame with a skill set that the 49ers don't really have. So they don't have a 6'5", 4'4" flat type of guy, right? He was a guy that ran very fast coming out of Notre Dame, I believe.
Notre Dame, yeah. The oldest of the 3 St. Brown brothers, by the way, because Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, is the middle brother. And obviously he's hit really big for the Detroit Lions coming out of USC. And then there was Osiris, who played locally here for Stanford, who's the youngest of the 3 brothers, I believe.
Yeah. So it shows some of that ability, but the 49ers don't have that. Like, they don't have that guy. We've been asking the 49ers to have that guy. Heck, go back some years, and Tim Patrick, I think it was 2017, 2018, 49ers picked him up, had him in training camp in 17 or 18, one of those years, and it was just like, 6'4", runs well, not my type, and sent him to the streets. Broncos picked him up, and he ended up doing well, playing well for the Broncos, and he's still in the NFL. So a guy that's been hanging around that long from 2017, 18, and he's still in the league, you missed something there. And St. Brown, enough people have seen St. Brown. This is not a Tim Patrick situation where he was with Baltimore and then signed with the Niners, all in training camp. A lot of people haven't seen him. Then he kind of made a name for himself with the Broncos. St. Brown has had a lot of opportunities, so maybe he just kind of is what he is. He played with the Chicago Bears for a little bit and some other spots, New Orleans Saints. Maybe he's just not great, and he is a camp body. But I would like to think, can we get a little bit out of this guy and see if he's somebody that at the very least can hang around on the practice squad, and again, just give you a little something that you don't quite have.
Right, and clearly Kyle Shanahan, he wants guys that can break off a route and or could give you yards after the catch. And that's not necessarily, if you're a long strider, 6'5", even with speed, and you can make plays down the field, you can, really hit the deep cross. Not really Kyle Shanahan's type. So, but we'll see. The 49ers, I think, have lacked someone with that ability. Now, a journeyman camp body in Equanimeous St. Brown, maybe he's not that guy, but maybe Kyle Shanahan will see that and be like, yeah, you know what? Maybe we need to get a better version of that at some point in this offense and give us a little bit more down the field, a presence that has that height and speed. More on some wide receivers, Croc, namely maybe 2 of the most important wide receivers after Jauan Jennings for 49ers, not at camp. Brandon Aiyuk, at least not practicing at camp. No timeline there. Then we'll talk Ricky Pearsall, what's going on with his injury. Ben Barch got injured. There's going to be, it looks like, a competition maybe at left guard, and a lot more about the young players, rookies and second-year guys from Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Monarch Money. And if You ever wished that managing money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings, planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, whether they're personal accounts, shared accounts. Managing money with your partner could not be easier than with Monarch Money. Stress-free. Manage your investments, spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. And whatever your financial goals are, maybe you're looking for pay for college, maybe you are buying that first home, whatever it is, and you want to be serious about it, Monarch Money can help. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. This episode is also brought to you by Rugiet and Rugiet Ready. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, and maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. And it's all completely online. Rugiet connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your door. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to get 50% off today. That's Rugiet, RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. So Brandon Aiyuk, doing well. John Lynch always talks about high-end athletes and how they're different and they heal different and everything going as well as it possibly could with Brandon Aiyuk, but they stopped short and in fact said there's no timeline at all. No timeline right now for Brandon Aiyuk and what that would take. I believe his injury was mid-season around week 7 or 8 last year, right, Croc? So, 9 to 12 months for a normal ACL. He had more than ACL. So, 9 months would be really fast to come back. I would argue it is probably closer to that 12-month mark for Brandon Aiyuk to come back. And even then, if you get him back before Halloween, I think that's a huge bonus for the 49ers. And it would be a pretty quick return for how nasty that injury was. So all good news there, but he's not far enough along for them to have a concrete timeline. And you can expect that probably at minimum, Brandon Aiyuk's going to miss the first 4 weeks of the season. He'll start on the injured list and then we'll go from there. So no timeline for Brandon Aiyuk, Croc. But Ricky Pearsall did get a little bit of a timeline on his hamstring injury. And Kyle Shanahan talked about 3 days. And why 3 days? Because that's the first grouping of practices. 3 days of practices, you're going to have a day off. And potentially they're hoping to ramp him up. And his hammy is good and could be activated potentially after those first 3 practices for the 49ers.
Yeah, that was exciting to hear. And, we've talked a lot about, when he's coming back, what exactly the injury is. But he said these were guys that essentially were cleared, but they have not seen them run and they don't want to do any more risk. So they want to kind of see a quote unquote 3-day ramp up period, see how they do, how their body handles it. And after the 1 day off, they'll be back and out there and we get to see Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah. And it's one thing if you had a wrist or an elbow or something, but if you're dealing with a lower body injury, a hamstring, a calf for Alfred Collins, was it an ankle for Marcus Siegel? Some of those guys, the conditioning could be a factor too. So, because you haven't been able to condition properly if you are injured, right? So they want to make sure that they don't throw them out there too soon. They want to get their eyes on them, evaluate them, have a little ramp up period, make sure conditioning is right before they are okay to go out there and actually practice and, make sure there's enough wide receivers out there. So Ricky Pearsall doesn't have to run so many routes that he pulls that hammy again when he is out there at practice. So good news, and probably over the weekend at some point, I would imagine that Sunday practice, it sounds like if they go 3 days on and then 1 day off, Sunday would be the next practice then that potentially Ricky Pearsall could get cleared for and join the rest of the team. When it comes to here's the transition to the offensive line, because we got to talk a little bit about the offensive line, and also listen to Tim Kawakami's podcast with Kyle Shanahan. Not a ton of information there, but he did talk about the O-line, and it was a question I'm glad that Kawakami asked him about, why not address the O-line, where they're at with that, future offensive tackle, and such things. But there's a player, we talked about this a little bit off the air just now, Croc, that we never really thought about, who's basically in the exact same situation that Jauan Jennings is, and that is the guy who's kind of outplayed his contract, starting caliber player at a high money position, and that's right tackle Colton McKvitz, and he's going to the last year of his contract as well. Could he pull a hold in and be like, you know what, Jauan Jennings, that's a pretty darn good idea, because we might be a little bit underpaid for being a starter at our position, which are big money positions in the NFL right now.
Oh, man, when you talk about it being pretty much identical to the situation with Jauan Jennings, these are guys who 49ers, drafted, cut, brought back, and we're watching McKvitz play different positions. We watch people kind of drag him through the mud on social media and just say this guy is terrible. To all of a sudden last year, I don't think people give him enough flowers for how well he played. It was almost kind of the Brock Purdy type thing, where he is like, oh, well, because he was a 7th round pick, a lot of people on the outside don't want to acknowledge how good he is. And I think for McKvitz, a lot of people have said so many kind of bad things about him and his ability at the tackle spot, and they don't want to give him his flowers for how well he played last year. But McKvitz was pretty good. Like he wasn't an issue at right tackle, and I think for me, it took me almost to the end of the year to be like, I think McKvitz is actually playing good.
Yeah, he's all right over there. Yeah,
it was quiet, because it was a 6-win team, but it was kind of like very quiet. But like, it's kind of hold it down at that right tackle spot. So I say all that to say, you fast forward to this offseason, and it's very similar to Jauan Jennings. Not a huge sample size of high level play, but in a position where a lot of guys aren't playing on 4th year contract like that. Last year of the contract, most people re-up, and Jauan Jennings, McKvitz have made themselves some money. Like McKvitz, maybe even more so than Jauan Jennings. If McKvitz was a free agent this offseason, what would he have gotten paid?
His backup, Jalen Moore, got $15 million a year from the Kansas City Chiefs, and he wasn't really necessarily McKivitz's backup. But if he was better than McKvitz at tackle, he would have been starting over McKvitz, right? So
right. So we're talking about maybe 30 a year. I mean, or I won't say 30, but about 25 a year. Like he would have 100% got 25. What the guarantees are, that they could have messed with that, but I think he would have got 25 million a year on the open market.
God, I don't know if he'd got that much. What did McGlinchey get a couple years ago? Was it 17 mil a year? And obviously money's gone up since then. But man, yeah, he probably would be right to ask for more than Jalen Moore got. Right tackle instead of left tackle, so that might make a difference, depending on what a team needs and wants. By the way, did you see at Kansas City Chiefs camp, Jalen Moore might have got a little too much money from the Chiefs, because Jalen Moore, they thought he might have to be stopgap left tackle for him with an injured 1st-round draft pick in Josh Simmons. Josh Simmons, a guy we loved a lot before the draft, Croc. He was in there. First practice, left tackle 1 for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay, so I jumped the gun on the amount per year. All right, tackles in general are not making as much per year as I was expecting. I don't know why I thought it was 30 plus million. I mean, we're seeing edge rushers getting 40 million a year, 41 million a year.
I think Sewell got pretty close to 30, didn't he?
The highest paid right now is Trent Williams. I mean, unless I'm looking at something that's outdated.
Yeah, Williams got re-upped last year to put him back ahead of Penei Sewell. Is that what it was?
Where is Penei Sewell? Something's wrong, because I don't even see Penei Sewell. I might be looking at something old, even though Trent Williams is 37 years old right here, so it can't be that old.
Salary and not cap hit, because it might still be low base salary this year, and it ramps up for Penei Sewell later in his contract.
Well, right here, it's just average per year.
Okay.
And now I see Jalen Moore right here. Jalen Moore is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He's about the 15th highest paid tackle in the NFL.
That's crazy.
And that's at $15 million per year. All right. Trent Williams, the highest paid, $27.5 million per year. In the top 5 just look like 27.5, 26, 25, 23, 22.5. So McKvitz win. I don't know why I thought tackle money was close to edge rushers. It's just not.
But yeah,
but Simmons though. My bad. Simmons.
Right.
I tweeted this out. I would have drafted him at 11 with the injury, and I just would have had to risk it. Now, we saw him out there. He's practicing. He's full go. People are worried about it. The biggest question still remains. Like, will he be the best version of himself? Like, what he was in college before the injury, will he return to that form? So I don't even think it was a question as to like, oh, will he ever play football again? Like, we knew he'd play football again. Will he be as good and as dominant as he was prior to the injury? And we won't know that until he plays a season.
Yeah.
But it wasn't very fun to see how well he was moving, on the first day of practice.
So Kyle Shanahan talked a little bit more about that with Kyle Kami. And basically he's like, well, and Tim was like, did you just not draft the tackle of the future because you don't care about the position, or is it because you had just so much work to do on the defensive side of the ball? And Kyle was basically like, well, we wanted to, but, just didn't work out. And we had some other things we had to address that were more pressing. And, maybe he didn't really say this, but I got the feeling that, if the right player would have been there at the right spot, they might have drafted a tackle instead of one of those 5 defensive players in a row. And it just didn't quite happen for him there. And they weren't going to force the offensive line. And he talked about how much he likes the offensive line they have now. Talked about McKvitz, talked about Brunskill, or not Brunskill. Brunskill did sign today with the Miami Dolphins, by the way. Talked about Brendel, the center, and how good they are. And Kyle Shanahan talked about how much he likes his offensive line. But he basically is like, but we will need to address that. Like it has to be done at some point. So they might have painted themselves into a corner, and we got to know what one of their big needs next offseason is potentially going to be, especially if they don't, lock up Colton McKvitz. And then, how long is Trent going to be around? So you got to at some point develop yourself a future offensive tackle, and they might have other needs on the offensive line, whether it be guard or elsewhere, center potentially even. It's funny because when you bring up Colton McKvitz and all the hate he used to get, I think instead of fans giving McKvitz his flowers for playing pretty well last year, they just turned their eyes to Brendel, and now they all want to crush Jake Brendel. So I think it's probably all the same comments. They just erased McKivitz's name and wrote Brendel in there because now he's kind of got the ire of 49ers fans on the offensive line. And hopefully the 49ers are good at left guard too, because Aaron Banks is gone, and Ben Barch is now a little bit banged up. Let's talk next more about Ben Barch. Kyle Shanahan talked about the competition potentially going on at left guard and how much they are expecting and hoping even that rookies will play a huge role on the 49ers defense this season next. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat, get your draft boards ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. And this year, like, let's be honest, every single year, I'm playing on Yahoo Fantasy. And you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all begins August 4th. So stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Start your own league at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL, and let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. We might have a little competition brewing on our hands, Croc, at left guard. And Ben Barch, over the course of the last 40 days, he was put on the NFI list because he was working out separately away from the team and during the time away and got banged up. So hurt away from the team, which is why it's NFI list, which is non-football injury list instead of the PUP list or a different injured list. They don't expect it to be too long, but When asked further, Kyle Shanahan was asked if Ben Bartch was, that guy kind of penciled in and they expected him to be the starter. And Kyle said, no, not necessarily. And it's kind of what we expected. He started at the end of the year last year when Banks was out and did a pretty good job, and they brought him back. And it seemed like he was slated to be the first guy. He was taking the first team reps in OTAs, but Kyle Shanahan said that there's a competition there and that Nick Zakelj is battling for the left guard spot. And then they said that they know Burford can do it already, but Burford is also trying to see if he can win a swing tackle job at the same time, but they do know that he could jump in and start at left guard. And so Ben Bartch hurt, which hurts his opportunity to hold off anybody that might go take that left guard job away from him. Kyle Shanahan only named those 3 names with left guard, didn't name someone like Matt Hennessy, who I would have thought would be in the mix as well. And to be honest with you, I think he's a better football player than Nick Zakelj. I haven't seen a lot from Nick Zakelj. We don't get to see a lot of him during the year because he's usually, a backup or not on offense very often. So maybe he's made some strides over the course of the last year since the last time I saw him in camp and years prior in preseason. But Nick Zakelj versus Ben Bartch potentially, and then Spencer Burford in there might have to start at left guard if he gives them their best 5. So that's what we're looking at with left guard right now with Bartch on the NFI list, but should be back soon.
A wise man once told me, and this was Tim McDonald, right? He was one of the secondary coaches when I was with the Jets. And I had like kind of this growing injury going on. It was kind of like a strain. And Tim McDonald told me, I'll never forget this. And it's different for guys at the bottom of the roster for myself. But he said, Croc, can't make the club in a tub. And basically what he was saying is, if you're hurt, that's going to hurt your chances of making this squad. And as it pertains to Bartch, if you're hurt, hey, it's going to open up competition. And I love that, man. I am a big proponent of everybody needs to compete. Not everybody. I mean, there's some guys, your spot's locked up. But if there's any type of questionable anything, there should be a competition. And that's going to bring the best out of everybody.
Yeah.
Or at least it should. So, heck yeah, man. Throw Spencer Burford into that competition as well. And let's see the best version of him. He's a guy who's played a lot. He started a good amount of games for the 49ers. Kind of, am I a starter? Am I not? Had a weird assignment thing go on in the Super Bowl. A lot of people won't forget that. But he's experienced now. He's a veteran. And I do believe that Spencer Burford is a guy who's going to play a lot of years in the NFL. I think we're going to look up at Spencer Burford. It's going to be 9-10 years later, and he's still in the league because he has shown just some positional value. Man, it's a huge opportunity for him to take over that guard spot just in time for in the contract year. So I'm excited to see how he takes on this competition and that opportunity.
Yeah, what's better for Burford, starting at left guard or being Trent Williams' backup? Because Trent Williams' backup just got $15 million a year, and Burford could be a hot commodity on the free agent market if you prove that you can start at left tackle and you can start at 4 of 5 positions on the offensive line, right? If you can play each guard spot, each tackle spot. So that could be quite valuable in itself, even if Burford is the swing tackle and not the starter at left guard for the 49ers. It does sound like Bartch is in the lead still, but Kyle Shanahan didn't want to go that far. You mentioned competition, and this is a really big one. Because Kyle Shanahan was asked about how many rookies might have to play a role and the expectations there for so many rookies. And I thought it was interesting that the way Kyle Shanahan phrased it, he said, we hope to have a chance. We hope to rely on the rookies, that there's a chance 6 rookies could start. He talked about as many as 8 rookies on defense. He talked about 6 rookies starting, Croc. So obviously, they drafted 5 in a row. That's Mykel Williams. That's Alfred Collins. That's Nick Martin at linebacker. That's C.J. West next to Alfred Collins at defense tackle. That's Upton Stout at the nickel. That's Marcus Siegel at safety. That's all the defensive guys they drafted, right? Did they draft some more defensive players?
I'll say this, man. Seeing all those defensive guys, if they are all indeed starters, one, we know what the 49ers like. They earned it. They're not just going to throw those guys out there just to throw them out there because they're rookies and they need some experience. All right. So they're doing something right. But 2, I did like to hear him say, when you are playing rookies like that, you can't just bench them the moment they do something bad. Like you have to live with the ups and downs, coach them up through it. And you hope they, the big thing, don't make the same mistake twice. So It was good. It was good to hear him, probably give a lot of those guys confidence. How often do they talk to the head coach, like defensive guys? And like, it's not high school football where you have a lot of guys that play both sides of the ball, so that they're kind of always kind of interacting with the head coach. Football, you may not speak to your head coach at all if you're on the other side of the ball, especially if you are a rookie and you're trying to learn your stuff. Like, you come together. So typically how it works is that you'll come in for the day. They'll have like a team meeting. So the head coach will address the entire team, but he's not going to be talking to a specific player. So then once you guys break out the team meeting, you go to your position groups and you have your positional meetings. And then you go out to the field and you practice. Like, unless Kyle Shanahan just randomly comes up to you and asks you how you're doing, you may not even really have a conversation with your head coach. So this may be the first time that some of these guys are hearing that Kyle even believes that they can potentially be starters. So like, it just gives you a certain level of confidence, like, going into it. Like, okay, man, if I do the right things, man, the head coach is noticing, because they ain't talking to everybody. I promise you.
Right. Marcus Siegel's listening to that press conference going, did he say 6? He's like, hold on. Starts with me. 6? That's me. He's talking about me. So, that's awesome. But like, Kyle Shanahan, the way he said it to me, what I gathered was they hope the rookies are winning those jobs, right? And so there are some expectations there. And you're right. He said they had to be patient with them, and he said the best guys are going to be out there. But also with that competition, he also said in OTAs, he already saw it. Like, you're going to make the veterans better, because the veterans have to hold off the rookies. So competition is going to make everybody better. But they hope that all these guys they drafted are good and are going to earn those spots. So I thought that was interesting. They basically hope that they're going to be starting 5 rookies this year on defense for the 49ers. Now, how good the defense will be starting that many guys, there will be some mistakes. There will be some growing pains. So you got to stick with them if they make a mistake, but they're not going to put them out there if they don't think they're the best guy too. So there's some confidence there with that, Croc. And he went into it a little bit more detail, talking about the confidence in developing young players because of, the year 2 guys and how good Pooney and Pearsall came on last year, and Renardo Green and Malik Mustafa, and such a good rookie class last year. And I think that embracing the 49ers to be like, look, we just developed 4 dudes like nothing. We can do that again this year. Let's draft a bunch of guys, develop, and we'll have starters. In 2019, he talked about Dre Greenlaw earned a starting job as a rookie. Obviously, Nick Bosa did. Deebo Samuel. So the 49ers are confident and that they can develop those guys. And they believe that these rookies, and hope that these rookies are good enough that they're going to earn those jobs and that they're going to be out there for the 49ers. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And obviously there's a wide open opportunity for all those guys that we mentioned, all 6 of those 49ers draft picks, and potentially some other guys too, some other young players. And he also talked about avoiding the sophomore slump, and those second year guys aren't out of the woods yet and have to not only not get worse, but actually get better and build on their rookie years.
When he kind of got to talking about D Winters, it was almost kind of putting D Winters on notice a little bit. And I heard with Fred Warner. Fred Warner's like, oh, he's ready to go. Reminds me of Dre Greenlaw when he was coming, And it's like, you want to hear that from Fred Warner, and a lot of times he has his players' backs. But with Kyle, it was almost like he was saying, hey, it's year 3.
Put up or shut up.
This is the year. You had the whole sophomore thing go by, and I won't. He didn't use the word sophomore slump with him, but just a guy that, hey, you got to show your worth this year. That was how I took it.
Would the 49ers have drafted Nick Martin as high as they did if they were convinced that D Winters was that guy as the starter next to Fred Warner? I don't think so. You can't. You can lie a lot when you're a GM or a head coach. You can lie into a microphone, but when you make that pick and you make those roster moves, you're not lying to anybody anymore. And you got to kind of tell the truth about that. So yeah, I think D Winters is on notice, and he's going to have to compete with Nick Martin to win that starting will spot next to Fred Warner. And a lot of guys are going to have to win a lot of spots and earn those spots in and around, in front of, behind Fred Warner on that 49ers defense this year. So it's going to be a fun camp with all those competitions. I can't wait. Let us know, what do you think is your favorite camp competition that you're excited to see? Practices start Wednesday, and of course, we've got it covered for you every single day, as we always do, through training camp, the preseason, and into the season right here on Locked On 49ers. Make sure you're subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Croc and I back tomorrow right here, Locked On 49ers.